My friend King Gabriel here again. Impromptu series continued. Today's video is appearances, where they come from and how they came to be. Now, we tend to think things in terms of time and whenever the body's life began, when you were born to your mother and came into this world. But life is a continual thing. Life is not something that springs up in 1 second and then disappears. Life is continuous. And the reason I can say this without really going into a whole long explanation is that I have experienced a transition from one state to another already. And when I say one state to another, I mean a life before this where I came in here. So for me, there's not very much doubt on the topic that there is the possibility of transference from one stage to another through what we call death. And so it's easy for me to just say that and not really feel like I'm not telling the truth, right? Because for me, it's an experiential truth. Now, we also know that experiential truth is not absolute truth, all right? So there is always that to deal with as well. But where we are right now is in dealing with the topic of life and appearances. Now, the appearances that we're dealing with are basically the idea of divisions or the idea of difference in being. Okay, like I would say, I would label myself I am, and back in the Bible they have I am that I am. That would be like a state of pure awareness. But I am would be I am, and I would put whatever I see myself as at that moment or in that experience as. So I would say I am King Gabriel Quincy Collymore, right? And then somebody else might say, I am Jeff, I am whatever I am. And they would take that and run with it as if that is really who they are and live into that and associate themselves with the principles of that being completely. Now, to the person that is aware, and when I say aware, I mean recognizing that consciousness is everything experiential, but there is something that supersedes that or something that, in a sense, oversees that. As the Rastas would say, overstand. You overstand things, you don't understand them, you stand over them, you are able to watch it from a place of being separate from them, but not really separate, just being able to observe them, right? Where you stand on that is that you're able to look at the situation, see it as it is, observe the threat or whatever to the parts of the system that you observe, but recognize that behind that there is an inherent wholeness to all of that, and there is really no threat to your being because your being is forever, just as we stated in the beginning. And so when we look at that whole landscape, that whole thing that's stretched out in front of us, we can see that it's really up to us to look at what we're perceiving, treat it well, take care of it, yes, but at the same time not become so attached to it that we totally engross ourselves or take on the qualities of that and forget completely that we are eternal beings, because then fear steps in, right? And once fear steps in, everything becomes really tumultuous, right? Your day-to-day experience could be very heavy if you're living in a fearful place, whereas if you know without a doubt, or with very little doubt, let's say that for now, with very little doubt, that life is this eternal thing, then is the fear of death necessary at all? Is it really? Right? What death is would be the idea that you're leaving behind all these things that are around you and they're meaningful to you because you put them there, right? They're meaningful to you. But the reality of the situation is, just as you go on, those things, those energies go on as well. And some people would say that saying that we are eternal is the same as saying that, let's say, a tree was made from a book, or a book was made from a tree, sorry. You would say that that means that the tree is eternal because it's going on and it's living on, and it's not the same thing really, because the transformation of that tree towards paper to make it into that book is not really the original thing that it was. So it lost its state and it was transferred into something else. But what if what really happens for us in terms of appearances and moving on in life is that we retain just a smidget of the memory from the past if we would like to, Therefore, the being that started off as a tree is still aware of itself all the way through its experience as the book, right? And that is a different experience. That is saying that, hey, I really am. I am and I continue to be. I am and I don't disappear. And some would call that personality in human terms. But back to the main topic, appearances. And why I spoke about all that, you'll see in a sec. So the appearances themselves are the idea that, hey, I'm different to you. I'm different to a wall, to a book, to a chair, to everything. And to the human mind, that would make perfect sense. But if all is one and all is consciousness, and all is the same energy that is one thing, then is there really any distinction when I put a name to myself, which is why I could have fun and change my name if I want or do anything I would want to do? The name itself is a vibration and it's a quality that you get to take on in that instant and go forth with. But if you decide to change that, is it not okay to do that? Who says it's not okay to do that? Who is above you that gets to do that or gets to not do that? Now, some would come up with the idea of a God that would judge and say that this is what I named you, so this is what you would be. But God has no interest in that, right? God made us as eternal beings. God doesn't play up in this time game here, which is why some people would reach out and realize that sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss, right? The hitting and the missing is about their individual consciousness and their acceptance of the fact that all this is really the power at work right now in and through them and as them as well. So when that is understood, then the pleading and the crying about the things that are to us important becomes more an idea of, okay, I see this is important to me. How can I help? How can I make this better? How can I serve this person who's suffering? How can I relieve their suffering? And then it seems to be heady, but it's actually the most connected we can possibly be. Because then our thoughts are of peace. We are inside that peace and we want to extend that peace and we want to help and we want to see that that person receives the value of that vibration, right? So, as I said, appearances, they come from the fact that we think that there is difference. So in the beginning when there was one, and there still is one still, but that oneness, in it arose the idea that something could be different. Something could be different. And that looked as simple as this. Energy is floating around, there's chaos or whatever, some would call it chaos, but there's energy happening. Things sparking, things flowing. It then almost kind of divides itself into a positive and negative force, right? Because something is being formed, something is happening, and it comes together and blows up again, and it tries again, and it does it again and again, and eventually it forms two parts from that one part, right? One that is still, one that is vibrating and carrying motion a bit. The one that's carrying motion seeks to make change in the situation. And from that, the idea of change, the idea of difference became available just because of the desire to do so, which is how we create always. When that became available, this one started to realize that it was different and separate from this one. And in that separation came the idea of different things and different ideas to name different things. And with those names, each thing became a separate thing of itself. And so all of these differences and different people, different bodies, different material items were born. They came to be, right? But at the end of the day, they are all that same energy expressing itself in a multitude of ways. And that is what consciousness is. It is the thing that expresses itself in many ways, but based on belief. The first belief that really started it was that idea that this thing was different to that thing. And those things then started to be different and populate and show in different ways and express in different ways. And that's how we have the variety of things we have right now. So that's how the appearances came to be, right? But in reality, and when I say reality, I'm obviously talking about your eternal life, they do not exist, all right? And that's a hard pill for most people to swallow, but to those who have already experienced enlightening experiences or experiences that let them know that the body is a vehicle, a wonderful communication vehicle, but not a permanent thing at all, right? Then they will pretty much get that idea of permanence in a body is an idea of trying to cling to something that is not even meant to be clinged to because it is part of the entire system that you're in. Okay? So that's where it came from. And the best thing that we can do while in it to continue to move forward, to progress, to expand our minds, to open ourselves to greater ideas of ourselves, is to do things like, yes, people still pray, definitely, and meditate, and do these sorts of things that heighten the consciousness to the point where it feels like it's in touch with the divine consciousness. And when we speak about the divine and divine consciousness, we do mean the idea of the one that's in it all, through it all, and works through us as well. And as we tune into it, we get higher ideas of ourselves, bigger ideas of ourselves. So we might start off by changing our name here and there, or doing things like that that let us think of ourselves in what we see as higher ways, which is all ego activity, understood. But at the same time, it allows us to expand the thought to the point where the ideas that we saw as so lofty before out there are now seemingly not that far off, and we can continue to move in that way. And that's how we expand, and the consciousness grows to the point where the consciousness grabs more of what is available, sees more of what is available, and accepts it into awareness. And by belief and acceptance, as we know, it becomes experience. So I know that this is a very interesting topic. I find it a very interesting topic, and I look forward to communicating with you on this. I will leave some links and stuff below for contact and connection, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Eternal love and infinite peace.